Hello, I am Mark Mottell. I'm a tax partner at Citrin Cooperman. I am sitting here today with Helen Nitkin, the chairman and co-founder of the Greenwich-based HB Nitkin Group, real estate investment management and development company. And HB Nitkin has been in business for more than 30 years, and throughout all those years has been a client. So we go way back. Never been through a pandemic before, but I'd like to have a discussion about current events and the business cycle and how things are going. To start, Helen, why don't you give us a little background about the company?
Hi, Mark. My name is Helen Nitkin. I'm the owner of HB Nitkin, which is a Greenwich-based real estate company. We own, manage, and develop commercial real estate throughout the state of Connecticut and some in New York State as well. And I started this company in the mid-1980s with my late husband, Brad Nitkin. I took over running the business 11 years ago after he passed away, and right when the recession stepped in, and now I'm dealing with this pandemic.
And of course, we're all working from home, but having never been through a pandemic before, it's first time for everybody. But Helen, how have you and your company been impacted by the virus, and what has been your biggest challenge so far?
Okay. Well, being in real estate and having many retail tenants, we've been very significantly affected. I would say, though, my first challenge, besides my tenants, is that I wanted to make sure that all the people that have worked with me and have worked with me for many, many years knew that their jobs were secure and that we were going to work through this together and get through this together. And I think the same approach with the people that I've worked with now for over 25 years. I also reached out to all of our tenants to let them know that we were going to be in this together and that we would work with them on a regular basis to help them get through this. We are firm believers that we like to keep tenants in place, and anything that we can do, not just anything, but I think in terms of reason, if we can work with our tenants and they will work with us, then we will get through this. But it may require some adjustments and deferrals of rents on our part. The other thing that we had to deal with is dealing with all of our lenders to seek forbearance agreements, which we were able to do as well. So I would say the biggest challenge are dealing both with tenants and lenders and the people that I work with to know that their jobs are secure. And also for my own personal to know that we've been through difficult times before, and we will get through this difficult time as well.
Right. So you had to make some changes, of course, but it's very noteworthy that you did not have to cut back on employees. And as you say, you have had the blessing of many longtime employees. So how did you effectuate everybody working efficiently and effectively? Was everybody I assume is working from home? Did you change your systems, or how did you do everything that you normally do? Things like how did the checks come in? Anything changed in that respect in terms of managing the cash flow and the checks and the payments to everybody?
Yeah, the one thing that we did is everybody had the opportunity to work remotely. We're a little bit, and I don't like to use this term, an old-fashioned company, because everybody has their own individual office. So if they wanted to come into work, they could, as long as they kept social distancing. And then we were able to receive our checks because the person who takes care of that chose to come into the office on a pretty regular basis. So it's a combination of those people who have worked socially distanced and those people who have worked remotely. And in the meantime, we have a regular Zoom meeting, and even I've stopped into the office from time to time, and need be, we actually have moved our office meetings outside. I say abnormal times can call for abnormal situations, but we have socially distanced our office meetings as well. But everybody is working pretty much I won't say full-time, but as much as they need to make sure that all of the tenants that we have to create deferral agreements with are taken care of. The lenders that we need to take care of, forbearance agreements are taken care of. And we, in the midst of this, and not to, we've even been able to do 2 refinancings based upon low interest rates. So I feel very fortunate that we have a well-oiled machine that can adapt to what we need to do for this given market.
Right. So it sounds like the employees were loyal and you were helpful to them, and it goes to long-term relationships. And I suspect the banks worked with you as well, because, you know, most properties have mortgages, and without rent coming in at the normal level, I'm sure you had to have some difficult conversations with the banks to get through this. What was their reaction, and how difficult was it to work with them?
And this is where, one never can anticipate what's going to happen, but I would say 90% of our loans are with regional banks, and we have personal relationships with those banks. So we can basically pick up the phone and speak to the banker that we need to, which I think has tremendously facilitated our ability to work through the forbearance agreements that we need. And so on all of the properties where we saw that there were going to be challenges in receiving rents, we were able to negotiate a 3-month forbearance. And I think it has to do with the types of relationships that we have with our banks, and that we know them on a personal level. I think the one lender where we have a CMBS loan, that property is on very solid footing, so we haven't had to deal with that. But I would say this is where having long-term relationships, both with your lenders and your tenants, really makes a difference. And that's how we've been able to get through it. But again, I don't know if this will be the end of it. 3 months could be enough, or will we have to go back to them for an extension? But we've been able to negotiate every agreement.
Commenting on the old-fashioned aspect of the company, the old-fashionedness of relationships with the employees and the relationships with the banks sort of came in very handy. That was a key to successfully getting through this. Said something for the old style in a way.
You know, very much so. You can. I think this, if one was to say the overall arching theme, and I could jump to sort of one of the later questions, is I think relationships. And I think that's what gets you through difficult times and dealing with business challenges. And I think everybody knows that we work hard to make sure that our mortgages are paid on time, our real estate taxes are paid on time. And that's also what we project to our tenants as well. You know, that we have a responsibility to our lenders and cities and towns, and they have a responsibility to hold up their end, which is paying rent when they can. But I think it is because we are so close to all the people that we work with that it has made a very big difference in this situation. And I've heard from other people where the real estate is owned by an entity that's so remote, I don't think that they've had the same type of sort of success in obtaining rents and forbearance agreements that we have.
Everything you've been talking about with respect to the employees and the banks really sends a message about your culture. And it sounds like the culture of the firm is very important and helps you guide the company through its decision-making. Can you talk a little bit about the culture of the company and how it's affecting everything?
Yeah, well, first of all, I feel so fortunate, and real estate, as you know, is not an easy business. However, I would say that the people I've worked with, and from everybody who is, my most recent employee actually is my son, who's been there now 5 years. But we work together really as a team. And I think everybody feels well respected, well taken care of, both financially and through appreciation. And I really work very hard to make sure that people are treated well and fairly. And, you know, with this sort of COVID virus, it's not just the person who works in the firm, but it's their family as well. And also we have 2 people in my firm who have, I would say, pre-existing conditions that make them vulnerable as well. So I really sort of, it's just not work, it's understanding their family. How are they doing? How's their family doing? Is there anything that you need for, you know, your health and safety? And one of the things that I didn't touch upon is, you know, that we really communicate. Everybody's communicating with everybody else. So, and I think they know they can pick up the phone anytime and call me, and vice versa. So a culture is very important. And I think the values that were instilled by my late husband or Brad are the same values that I've tried to instill when I took over 11 years ago.
Sure, it's working very well.
Yeah.
So we've been living this for coming up on 4 months now. And from listening to the news, it sounds like it could be getting worse in the future or shortly. So is there anything you learned to date that you think would help get through a surge that could happen later? Or what are the new plans for later if this thing lasts for a lot longer?
You know, one of the things, you know, we have a fair number of retail tenants. We have restaurants, we have entertainment venues, gyms, all the businesses that are so significantly impacted. To be honest, when I first started, you know, when this first happened, I thought, oh, 40 years worth of work can go down the drain. However, I think the most important thing, and also having lived through the recession, is making sure you have enough in reserves. And then it goes back to, you know, will the people who are your stakeholders work with you? And I will tell you that this is almost the first time in, as long as we have outside investors. I've not made distributions, which was a difficult thing to do, but had to be done. And on the other hand, I would say the fact that we've sort of transitioned out of retail over the last 5 years and more into medical and office and residential has helped stabilize the portfolio. And those areas have been less affected by COVID-19 than the retail. But I think you just, you know, as we deal with our tenants, and if they haven't opened, I don't think they have any idea as to how their business is going to run going forward. So we've just had to work with them sort of on a day-by-day basis and as it comes about. But I think the most important thing is that I have maintained reserve funds to try to get us through this. And one of the things I remember, this is from years ago, a major developer who didn't have the reserve funds, and had he been able to last for a few more months, the market began to turn around. So I feel very strongly about making sure that we get through this and stay intact.
Yeah, being strong financially is key, both for the health of the company, the employees, the investors, everybody. So that's smart business, and you see it all the time where companies just are not capitalized sufficiently, and there's sort of quote living paycheck to paycheck at the company level, and you throw a potential disruption like this into the mix, and they just can't survive it. So obviously, you're making the right decision to keep adequate reserves on hand and keeping the company strong so you could weather the storm. But you know, at some point, hopefully we'll get back to normal, and hopefully, you know, you'll be able to open something close to normal. Are you going to do that in stages, or what do you think your plan is for a reopening, and what will it look like in your office?
Well, I think normal is like can one say a non-normal term? You know, just one thing I didn't mention as well is, you know, we worked really well with the management of the people, the people who manage my office and medical to make sure everything was done so those people could go back to work and feel like they were working in a safe environment. And we are following all the CDC guidelines. However, for my company, I think it really depends upon what nature and science will come up with in the next few months or year. But I also see that where we are now is not going to go away so quickly. And I think that it's really going to take about a year to two before we begin to stabilize again. So I have no crystal ball as to what normal will be. I just think the one thing that we have to do is be effective and be responsive to the needs that we have at the time that we need them. And I think it's also important to be able to read the signs that are, the signs in the market and in the economy, and again, be able to respond to that.
And in the future, do you think you would be changing your asset investment class, different types of investments that you think would be stronger in this new world? Or do you think what you've been doing is the way to keep going?
Well, I think it's been a focus of ours to really try to diminish our position in retail. We've sold some properties, and when the time is right, we will continue to sell properties in the retail sector and focus more on the medical, which, even though that has been challenging during the time of COVID because fewer people are going to doctors, they are much more stable than other types of tenants. So we will continue to do that. And also in the midst of all of this, we are starting buying a new property and doing a new development, but that will probably take about 2 years. So, we're still proactive and we are still active, but very careful and making sure that they're in areas where we feel we will be more protected other than the retail there, which is where we started when we started 30 years ago.
Certainly the diversification of the investments is going to help, and going that route is going to make the company stronger than it has been in the past, and will continue to be successful as it has for the past, 35 years or however long it's been. I can't remember that long back. Thank you very much, and very interesting, and good luck the rest of the way, however long that may be. We hope it's only going to be a few months, but could be longer. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It's always a pleasure being with you, working with you, and Citrin Cooperman as well.
Thanks.